Have you ever gotten a call that says your poop's on fire? Well, I haven't, but our next guest has. Well, it wasn't exactly those words, but it was, hey, your septic treatment plant has burned down. And what sounded like an insurance problem turned into a massive problem for this mobile home park and owner. He talks about what happened, how he got into it, how he got through it, and the lessons that he learned. It's so valuable. I do not want you to miss it because problems are inherent in real estate investing. If you haven't had them yet, you will if you stay in the asset long enough. Please join me, Eric Stenbakken, and my co-host, Christy Candle, on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth of real estate investing.
This is the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, but don't let the name fool you. We're not here to be negative. We're here to be real, to pull back the curtain and show you what's behind those highlight reels. I'm Christy Candle, a developer, investor, and someone who's made a career out of turning hard lessons into practical tools and helping others become developers in their own communities. Along with my co-host, Eric Stenbakken, we're bringing you unfiltered stories behind the deals, the ones you don't see on social media, the blown budgets, the nightmare tenants, the surprise wins, and the wisdom that comes from actually living it. Because real estate isn't all about private jets and passive income. Sometimes it's evictions and 3 a.m. plumbing disasters, and we're here for all of it.
Oh, that was awesome, Christy. She just put that together just now. We're going to have to roll with that. I like that intro. My name's Eric Stenbakken, and I've been a real estate investor since 2010, mostly single family homes and vacation rentals. But I am interested in everything. And today, our guest, Corey Harrelson, has been doing a number of things. His specialty, we'll let you tell us about that. But we got some stories. We have got some stories for you coming to us from Idaho. Corey, tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Yeah, so I buy mobile home parks. Our goal is to be buying ugly mobile home parks in great locations and making them nicer and filling them up to provide more affordable housing for people that need them. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing.
That is one thing I have not done. I looked at a mobile home park out here in Colorado. I found it on LoopNet, which my broker said that's where deals go to die. And I was like, do I really want to do this? Scary. There's a lot going on with mobile home parks. They seem so easy. It's just a little bit of dirt with these mobile things. You could take it away if you don't like it. I have a hunch it's not quite that easy.
Yeah, they have a reputation. Everybody kind of the stereotype that they have in the investing world is it's tenant-owned homes. You don't own the home, they own the home. So if it's a leaky toilet, it's not your toilet. So therefore, there's nothing for you to do as the landlord.
No problems.
And that's not quite accurate.
Not quite accurate because those toilets go somewhere. We're going to get to that later. But before we do that, I have got to hear your story about Half Dome. I have never climbed Half Dome. I love the outdoors. I've climbed about half of the 14ers in Colorado and a few other mountains people have heard of, but never Half Dome. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so there was a time in my life when all I wanted to do was climb, pretty much before I had kids, when I had free time. And so I spent a lot of time climbing. That's all I could think about. My buddy Yaman and I we had this goal to climb there's several routes up Half Dome. There's the flat kind of overhanging side and there's the round back side. So I had climbed some routes on the round side, but I really wanted to do it. It's called the regular Northwest Face. It's the iconic route. It was, I think, one of the first big wall climbs ever done in Yosemite by Royal Robbins way back in the day. So we went to go do it. It's actually our second attempt. Yeah. So the second time we were supposed to have good weather for the weekend. So we flew there. We drove in on Friday night. Saturday, we hiked to the base of it. It's a 2,000 feet or something up. 1,800, 2,000 feet to get to the base of it, if I remember right. We were supposed to get good weather Saturday, good weather Sunday. And then there was supposed to be a storm coming in, like a light chance of showers Monday. So we were going to climb 3/4 of the way up. It's 20 pitches. So a pitch is one rope length. The rope's 200 feet long. So it's 15 pitches up. There's a ledge and we were going to sleep on the ledge, climb the next 5 pitches the next morning, and then get out on Sunday, a day ahead of the storm, drive out and catch a was it a Sunday evening or Monday morning flight? The last time we had service, we checked the weather forecast and they had moved the storm a day earlier. So now it was supposed to be still just light chance of showers, but Sunday we made a decision. We said, well, let's just beat the storm to the top. We'll leave all the stuff with sleeping bags and all the stuff we were going to sleep with. We'll leave most of the food, half the food behind, most of the water. We're just trying to go as light as we can so we can skip the night's sleep. So we can just get up and get off it in a day. So we tried to climb it in a day, and we got the first 15 pitches were beautiful weather, awesome climbing. We got up to Big Sandy Ledge, 5 pitches to go. And right as the sun was setting, and that was the last of the beautiful weather. And so we're aid climbing in the dark by headlamp, and it starts to snow. And the aid proved trickier than I was anticipating. I took a 30-foot fall at one point when I had several shaky pieces in a row, and one of them ripped. And then we were 1 pitch from the top. It should have been the easiest pitch on the climb. Basically, you just walk up it. But at that point, it was not like overhanging anymore. It was less than vertical. And the isothermal snow was sticking to the rock. And so there was no friction. So there's no way we could climb. We're stuck in a blizzard because the light showers turned out to be a blizzard. And I'm like, there's visions in my head of like, there was some guys who died on El Cap, like right below the top. They got frozen to the cliff face. Like, this is not good. And so we were just like, okay, like, let's figure this out. Like, what do we do? The sun was rising. I've climbed a lot past dark. I never have climbed all the way through the night other than this one. So where the sun actually rose the next morning, we were still going. We're anchored in, we're safe. Like, let's figure it out. We made it to the top, and then it was just howling snow, super slick. Like, I didn't even know if there was enough friction to walk down to where the cables start to rappel off, but we did. It was like trying to rappel down like a vertical ice rink though. So we finally got off, and we're finally safe. Like, I didn't think we were going to make it. We made the decision. We're just going to abandon the sleeping bag and the rope. We made it down. It was 34 hours car to car. So it was maybe not the best decision I've ever made to go for that in that style. But we figured it out.
Crazy stuff. And knowing the little bit that I do about your real estate journey, I would say maybe that was a training run, right? Less snow, maybe less ice, but that determination to like, this did not go according to plan, and this sucks. And there's kind of no way out but through. I've been on a climbing route or two where things were just like, well, the only way we're going is we're finishing this thing. And that is how that goes. Before we get into that particular story, which I gotta drop the name, it's called the poop plant fire. That's the name of Corey's story here, right? So we're going to get into this, and you never want to get that message or that call. You know, I've gotten a call, it was less dramatic than his, where my vendor says, there's turds everywhere. And he was not exaggerating. It's
not
like,
good.
Okay, you don't want that call. You're in it long enough, you're going to get a variation of that call someday. That's why this podcast exists, is to talk about this, to say that, hey, you're not special. When the stuff happens to you, guess what? It happens to other people too. It just doesn't make the highlight reels, but it happens. He made it through the climb. He made it through this thing, and you can too. But I want to hear why. Why did you start investing in mobile home parks? Was it just because, man, that sounds super cool? Was there something on the other side of that you wanted more than the work that it takes to do it?
100%. So about 10 years ago, 2015, I was working as a structural engineer. So designing buildings, trying to make them not fall down. And it was this great career that like I should have been super happy with. I worked with awesome people. I got to work on awesome projects, but I was also working 60 to 80 hour weeks. I had recently had my first kid. I felt like I was not going to see him at all. I would leave for work off like very often in the morning before he woke up. And then I would get home and he would already be asleep at night. I wouldn't even see him awake. There was a whole week of that where I literally didn't see him awake for a whole week. I was working on some deadline that was like apparently important. I don't even remember what it was. But it was Sunday. Finally, it was like 5 o'clock. I was like, screw this. I'm going to go home and put my kid to bed. So I stormed out of the office and went home. I was like, I'm going to make it there before he goes to bed. So I went to take him from my wife. And he was not quite 2. He was like 1 year old and something. And he freaked out. It was like stranger danger where he like screaming, clawing, trying to get back to mom, like sort of like you hand him to the uncle who he's never met. He's like, who is this person? And I realized I was becoming a stranger to my own son. And I hated that. It broke my heart. So I didn't know what I was going to, I was just like, I can't do this. And up until then, I had like, people would bring up retirement investing and be like, oh, I'll think about that when I'm 65. Like I just didn't, I want to go climbing and I want to design buildings. And that was all I was doing. So I didn't, and that was when I kind of had this, like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing right now till I'm 65. Like, this is not what I wanted. This is not I can't. So I knew I was going to do something. Someone gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad. I went down that right. Rich Dad Poor Dad and Bigger Pockets and said, oh my gosh, real estate. So my wife and I were like, okay, we're going to buy a duplex, threeplex, fourplex. That was our That was our original buy box. I'm an engineer. I'm a nerd. So I figured out how to build a pro forma, and I built a spreadsheet, started analyzing deals. And even back then they all sucked. I could have like sent mailers and driven for dollars. I was analyzing like listed deals. Still, it was like, I was pretty discouraged after reading, Robert Kiyosaki makes it sound just like, oh, you just do this and this cash flow just rains. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, these are barely going to cover the mortgage payment. What about maintenance and all these other expenses?
Right. Welcome to investing.
So I stumbled on a mobile home park on Craigslist. It was like a little one. It was like a 9-unit. I didn't end up buying that one, but it was 9-unit mobile home park. And I punched those numbers in my spreadsheet and it looked much better. And I was like, oh, like this could be a thing. And so I got excited. I reached out to the only guy in the world. I knew my buddy Matt, who invested. He's the only person I knew who had real estate rental properties. And I took him out for beer and I was like, Matt, I'm thinking of doing something dumb and I need you to talk me out of it. It's like, and I need you to tell me why. I'm thinking of buying a mobile home park. And he said, oh no, I know guys who own those. They're cash cows. They're great.
So he wasn't helping you not avoid this. He was like, let's go.
No, he was like, no, do it.
Are you an aspiring real estate developer who wants to get in the game but feels overwhelmed by where to start? What if I personally mentored you, giving you the exact guidance and strategies to complete your first development project without making costly mistakes or needing millions in the bank? Would you take me up on that offer? I'm Christy Candle, and I've developed over $450 million in projects across the country. After nearly 20 years in development, I created this mentorship to give you the exact guidance and support I wish I had when I started. Are you next?
So we sent out a bunch of mailers, and back then it was like mobile home parks weren't really a thing. Like people would look at you sideways, like you're buying what? And so we got a whole bunch of responses back. We basically just laid all these letters out on the table and we're like, we'll take that one. And so we bought our first park in 2016. It was a little 12-unit park, 10-minute bike ride from my house. It was great. Everyone says like your first deal is always a bomb, and then you learn everything, and then from those lessons you do well. Like my first several went swimmingly well. So that one and the timing, we did stuff. I got all the Frank Rolfe boot camp. I did a bunch of education and like taught myself a bunch about it, like what to do and how to do the management and all the stuff. And we filled the vacancy and we filled back water and sewer. And we figured out what was wrong with the park. We fixed stuff, and then I also had like a good fortunate timing buying in the late teens. But so over 5 years on that one, we managed to 9x our money on that. So then I was very hooked. And along that time we bought and sold a couple others. That one we did a cash out refi first and bought something else with it. And then the next, a year later, the price went up even more and we sold it. So that was like a very nice intro, but I think it was, I always had it in my head because you'd always listen to Bigger Pockets and they'd always say like your first deal, things are going to go wrong and then you're going to learn and then, then you'll get better. And I always kind of had it in my head, like at some point, something, it's not going to keep going this way. So we ended up scaling up into this 51 lot park, the Poop Plant Park in Michigan I cashed out refi and scaled up into that with the cash out refi from the first park. And so then all my capital was like tied up, but I had cash flow, I had money in the bank. And that was when I started to have like some friends and family come and say like, hey, this is super cool. Like take our money and do it too. So then I partnered with my brother-in-law. That's when we started trying to figure out the syndication thing.
So you started in 2016, you got through the first couple, and then you scaled up. So was that a matter of refinancing and cashing out and buying, or were you selling parks? What do you think that split was of holding versus selling to scale up the capital?
Yeah, so they were all small ones. The first ones that we bought, it was like 12 units, 7 units, 6 units, it was that kind of size, small, a lot of like in Garden City here in Boise where there was a bunch of them. And so, some of them, I cashed out refied the first one. We held the others for a few years. And then it like with where the market went, it was like, I don't think these are worth what people are willing to pay. So I sold a few. I I did the cash out refi on the one because one was just so easy. It was at 12 units. By the time we got it full, it was all tenant owned homes. Like it took me an hour a month. It was like, it took me by time. Eventually like there was a bunch of work. I've got actually some good stories like getting to that point, but like once it was full with tenant owned homes, it took no time and it just cash flowed. It was great. Like, I didn't want to sell it, but So we cashed out refi, we bought the bigger park. And then the next year I got an offer that I couldn't refuse and I sold it and bought another.
There's always a number. There's always a number that's like, well, if you give me this number, I guess this amazing asset, because you are getting that upside. Okay, and then you kind of just hinted on getting into syndications and taking other people's money. Well, I guess on the first couple, did you have partners in those? Was that just you and your wife, or?
No, just me and my wife.
Okay.
We used like a combination of our savings. We took a HELOC on our house, and then what we would do is we would just put the cash flow. We got really intentional about our savings, our savings rate after that as well. So our savings rate was up at like 50 or 60%. We got really, really frugal. The fans blowing the cold air out at night to keep the AC bill down in the summer and like all the things. But so we got our savings rate really high, and then we had the cash flow from the mobile home park. So we would, for the first we would just funnel all of our savings and the cash flow into paying down the HELOC. And then we'd use that again for another down payment the next year. And we did that for the first 3 parks, I think.
So I want to pause here for just a second and say that what he's doing here is not that uncommon. There's kind of this mystique, and it's in many cases, it's a false vision of what real estate investors do. It's kind of this idea that like, hey man, they just like turn on some invisible tap and all this money flows in, and they're just out there living the high life. They're driving Maseratis and they're going to Cancun and staying in the penthouse and doing all this other stuff. Corey's story is more like more investors than you would think. Is that they're living their life, they're just doing the thing, and all of a sudden there's some sort of epiphany. It's like, oh snap, this is not okay. And my wife, she's in medicine, and she was working 78 hours a week. And one of the epiphanies that happened for us is I had a little daughter, and I was taking care of her. And the people, when somebody at church said, she went to church with me one week, and somebody said, oh, we thought he was a single dad. And we're like, ha, no. And then later, like, that's actually not that funny. Like, this is not cool. We do not want to live forever like this. Many people do. They just do the things, they do the work, and they just rinse and repeat every single day, every single year. And then they look back like, what happened? So then investors start. They'll buy a thing. And as our story as well, we took all the cash flow that we had and we put it into the next deal. And our savings rate went up, not down. We had as much income as before, but more, except we spent less. And, to this day, our kids are like, fine, yeah, you'll buy that for the vacation rental place, but our house doesn't have that. How come we don't have it? Like, right? So we own multiple swimming pools. Not at my house. We have saunas, not at my house. We have hot tubs everywhere. Not one at my house. And it's like, that's the way that it is. And so I just want to say, if you've got this vision of what investing is like in your mind, it's like, oh, cool. So I put a quarter in the machine and then it just dumps out dollars and then I just go spend them. No, actually, most people who are successful and who end up being the successful real estate investors that later you say, must be nice. They put a lot of sacrifice into this. The savings rate goes up. The expenditures on self comes down. And yes, there are some of those people out there who are doing the lifestyle things, who've got the Instagram followings, who's like, hey, look at my watch. That's how rich I am. And you can be too if you only buy my course for blah, blah, blah. Whatever, that's their thing. But what I'm telling you is that the bread and butter of most successful investors is what we're hearing right now from Corey, where it's like, hey, man, there was this moment in my life where I said, I don't want to continue doing this. I have got to if I don't do something different, nothing different will happen. And so Corey's like, I got to do something different, got to build something on the side. And this happens with a lot of professionals, right? They have good jobs. They're making decent money, but they're working really hard for it, right?
And they're spending it all instead of investing it all.
And then there's this like, okay, wait a minute. No, we need to get intentional about it. And so I just wanted to say, that's awesome. Good on you. It is, I think, more common than people realize, the bread and butter, working hard, building a side gig that becomes more and more and more, and then it becomes the main gig. So tell us kind of what happened with your engineering career. What'd you do with that? And family? Did you in fact get a little bit more time with family, the goal that you were aiming for?
So I did. And that was actually one of the things I thought I needed to build up this massive pile of cash to get to financial independence, which was like a major goal. But I actually got a lot of time back earlier than that. Like after the first couple mobile home parks, my wife was able to step away from her job, which helped. She was a teacher. So her salary wasn't that high to begin with. And we had our second kid. It was like, hey, your whole salary is going to go to the preschool
Daycare.
To daycare. But so she was able to step away from her job. And then we still managed to get our savings rate back up to 50% with just the one salary. So already that helped. And then the other kind of parallel thing that I did was it was like The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod I read. And I was at the time just like any book I could get to figure out some kind of hint as to what I should do. But that kind of opened up a lot of space that I didn't feel like I had in my schedule in the morning to kind of like take a step back and like reflect on why am I working 60 to 80 hours a week? No one's got a gun to my head. It wasn't like my boss said, you have to work 80 hours a week. And I started reflecting on it. I was like, okay, why? And it took me a while to kind of process it, but finally I realized like, well, it's because I stepped up to this new role in my job where I'm running this huge project right now where I've got people working for me in the Boise office, the Pasadena office, Los Angeles, San Diego, St. Louis. I had just this huge scattered team and I had no idea how to lead people. And I was basically sucking at my job. And so I was throwing extra hours at it to try to compensate for the fact that I was doing a crappy job. My projects were over budget, they were late, and the problem wasn't a lack of hours. So throwing more hours at it didn't fix it. So the other kind of parallel track that I went on was, hey, let me try to get better. And so I read a whole bunch of like product, I started with like the personal productivity books. Like I had Post-its all over the place and emails and people, there would just be stacks and stacks of papers on my desk. And like, I'd finally like a week later get through like to the bottom of the stack and be like, oh, there's a to-do list from a week ago of stuff I was supposed to do. So I got my stuff together, which like, getting things done really, really helped me, the David Allen one. And then I started reading books on like leadership and teamwork and I got a lot better. And I took it from, I averaged in 2016, my average was 60 per week hours. And around in 2021, 2 weeks before the poop plant story that I'll get to, I went into my boss. I was like, I'm financially independent. I have, a huge stack of runway cash. I have cash flow coming in. I went in to leave my job and he convinced me to stay part-time.
I am co-host of this podcast because education is my calling. That's also why I developed a course on short-term rentals. It's called STR in an Hour, and it's perfect for busy professionals. It's a lot of content packed into 1 hour. No fluff, no upsell. It's an overview of STRs from A to Z. Everything from how to choose a property to how to estimate income and expenses. It's literally the best and most content I could pack into 59 minutes. With over 4,000 nightly stays in my own STRs, I've learned important lessons, and I want to share them with you. Link with more information in the show notes.
And so thank God he did, because 2 weeks later, the poop plant thing happened. But so I was working 30 hours a week so that I could focus more on my business and the syndication stuff. And I looked at my and I did that for 18 months before I quit. I did it at 30 hours a week. And the last 12 months of it, I looked both the revenue that I brought in and the profits that I brought in from the projects I was managing were 5x what I did back in 2016. So I went from 60 hours to 30 hours and I 5x'd the revenue and profits that I brought in. So like on a per hour basis, that's a 10x. So that was so I didn't have to save any money to do any of that. All I had to do was like just be a little bit humble and realize, hey, I'm learning a new skill here and I need to actually focus on improving.
That's so incredibly awesome. And a point that might be invisible, that people might miss, is the fact that although you were good at what you did when you started, there's Goldsmith's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, is that you became a good engineer. And they said, oh, you're awesome. You must be a good manager too. And now you've got all the skills that you used to be a good engineer were not necessarily the skills that you needed for the next phase, which takes us to learning. You were willing to say, okay, I got to be a learner. Again, I admit that I don't know things, go in and master new skills. Sometimes there's this idea that like, well, it'll just come to you naturally, right? Just this idea of how you handle anything, people, projects, problems, they'll just come to you in the moment, right? And the fact is that you were very intentional about learning how to handle things and to do better at it. So take us to Michigan. You've got a big property here. You're going to buy this thing. Take us through how you got into the poop plant fire, how you got through it, and how you got out of that.
Yeah. So I had just done the cash out refinance on my first park. So I had a chunk of capital and I was looking for another deal. 2020 COVID hits and I'm just kind of convinced like this is going to blow over. So no, all of a sudden, I'm looking for deals and anyway, I found this 51 lot park, not on LoopNet. It was probably on Crexy, but the price had been dropped and dropped and dropped because there was no one was doing anything. And I was looking at, I was like, well, like I just wasn't convinced that the world was going to end. So I got a really good price right at the COVID dip when nobody else was buying. I put it under contract. The broker told me like 2 weeks later, they started getting flooded with phone calls. So I bought this mobile home park. It was it was 51 lots. It was right on this river, right on the Huron River in Michigan. Tenant-owned homes, nicely manicured lawns, stand-up paddle boarders going by on the river, like just a nice location. City water, which is great. It had one trait though. No public sewer was available. So it had what's called like a package plant or a wastewater treatment plant. So it's like a mini private sewer plant that we owned. It was too close to the river to have a septic field. Normally private sewer would be septic. I've had other parks that are septic and stuff. And those aren't as scary as this now. So anyway, it's the sewer plant, and it rightfully, like in due diligence, like I didn't like take it lightly. Like I was scared of this thing. I was like, I need to figure out what. So I did all the research I could on how do we do due diligence on this. I had it inspected. I interviewed the operator. I talked to the city, the county, the state, the federal EPA. I mean, poop water was coming in one end, and it was shooting out clean effluent into the river on the other. And they were testing it every single day and submitting samples, and the whole thing was tip top. Everything was good. So I did all that right. Like, I don't think I would change anything I did on the due diligence. I made one tiny mistake though. That was the difference between a home run and like the most stressful experience of my life. And that was on the insurance. The appraiser they'll put in the appraisal recommended values recommended insurance values for all of the things that need insurance on the property. And I just took his word for it. And I remember it wasn't even like I even thought about it. He had $60,000 in there as the replacement cost. And I remember thinking
for this little facility here, like if you had a clubhouse, you might be 200,000 for the clubhouse, right, and something else for something else.
This was this kind of like barn building. It was in a building, but it was just basically like a little metal, like a kind of barn type building that this thing was in there. It was made of steel. It was like a bunch of tanks full of water. And so he had $70,000. And I even remember thinking like, well, I've got like a really good like emergency savings. Like even if nothing's probably going to happen to it. And if it does, even if it's like $100,000, if they're way off, like it wouldn't sink me. So that's probably, I did put that much thought into it. In hindsight, I should have talked to a contractor and validated what it actually costs to replace these things. So we got the park, everything's good. We're filling in vacancies. We got set up with 21st Mortgage and we're bringing in brand new homes and putting them in there and providing more housing and raising the value and doing all that. We installed sub meters for the water. We did some paving repair. We did stuff to like make the place nicer. And then what was it, a year and a half in? Anyway, maybe call it a year in. I was going to go a little over a year in. I was getting ready to go out of town. It was October. I was going to be going out of town on a hunting trip, actually. And it was Saturday, and my phone started ringing from the property manager. And that's never
always the weekend, isn't
good.
it?
It's always when you have something cool planned or a holiday too.
Yes. Yeah. I was packing. I was leaving like early, in the next morning. And he said, hey, there was a fire. The building with the wastewater treatment plant in it burned down and it's total. And so that was scary, but I had insurance. So I was like, okay. And he's like, I already contacted insurance. I did this. I contacted insurance. We've got this company that can haul the sewage temporarily. So we did all that. So I don't think there's anything more to do right now. I wanted to let you know. And I was like, I'm supposed to be gone hunting. And he's like, I think I got it. Go on your trip. So I was like, okay. So I go on the trip and I'm just like, my head's spinning the whole time. And I wasn't really present for it. And I got back and that was for good reason. So we had $70,000 of insurance on the plant. And finally, fortunately I had a civil engineer already looking at it. So I got lucky in this regard because we were planning on doing some upgrades. It was like, maybe we can install UV and like reduce the cost of it to boost the NOI, right? That was like a thing. So like literally 2 weeks before I had just gotten a report on this plant from a civil engineer. So I had a civil engineer who knew the plant. So that was, the call. And he he knew like the contractors who replace these things. So he started recommended a few of them. So I called and finally we started getting quotes, and I realized like the cost to replace this thing ended up being $6,000. So 10x off. So my little 150K or whatever I had in the savings account was not going to cover
You've got
that.
that hanging around, right? You've got a money tree that you just pick it off of?
Yeah. And that wasn't even the worst part. It gets worse. The temporary pumping of the sewage was $800 a load, multiple loads per day, worked out to $50,000 a month. And the park grossed $25,000 a month before any expenses or loan payment or anything like that. So it didn't, there was no way. I had extra, there was some kind of extra to my insurer's credit. He had put some kind of thing in there that was some kind of extra special coverage that somehow kicked in and had $100,000 of this extra special coverage that basically covered pumping. It was going to go towards the pumping. But once I realized the burn rate, I could do the math real easy. It was like, we're going to run out of this. And then what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I personally guaranteed it was a recourse loan. I had guaranteed the loan. So I was like, I think I had a teary conversation with my wife. Like, I think we're going to lose the house. I think we're going to lose everything. Because what happens when that insurance runs out? Like, we can't pay the $50,000 a month. The property doesn't make enough money for it. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm going through all these scenarios in my head. Like, do we just evict all of the tenants to make the $50,000 a year stop? But then there's 51 families that are losing their homes. Like, what about them? Like, they can't live in a place with no sewer, right? So they can't make the sewage stops. I just had no idea what to do. I was like panicking. I can't sleep. Like, I mean, just like adrenaline 24/7 for salt. Like, I couldn't even think. All I could think to do was just start calling everyone I could think of and asking for ideas. I called so many different people.
And knowing what I know about permitting and design, I know you had a civil engineer look at it, but that doesn't mean there were plans submitted to a city. That doesn't mean, I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of environmental component for cleanup. Like 2 months, you've got 2 to 4 months of insurance covering your gap of just getting the stuff out, not even the cost to rebuild. So.
And there was a wait list for these plans. So it was going to be like a year to a year and a half was what they said to get a new plan.
Yeah, I was working with an RV company and they were putting these in at different ones. And I went down that rabbit hole of what they are. Wow. Okay.
So I didn't know what to do. So I was like, okay, what can I do? Well, I know people. So I'm just going to start seeing if someone can. So I called Frank Rolfe, who's like an educator in the space. He took the call and like tried to point me to the direction. He pointed me to some other people. Finally, though, the person I talked to, there's another mobile home park owner, the guy I bought my very first park from. I've kind of become friends with him.
Craigslist?
I called. No, I didn't end up buying the Craigslist one. This is the one I sent a bunch of mailers out. But my buddy Blake, but he was like, dude, you just got to call your lender and level with them. And I was like, oh, you're right. So I made the phone call that I never wanted to have to make. That's like, I don't care if it's an investor or a lender, anybody. If someone's giving me money for stuff, I don't want to not be able to pay something back. I called John Metternach with First Secure Capital, super good dude. And I said, John, I have a problem. I explained the whole thing. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, here's the numbers. Like, insurance is covering it to here. Like, I don't know what to do. And he goes, well, I think you're going to be fine. And I was like, what, John, John, did you just hear what I said?
My world
goes,
just
well, no.
imploded,
And then
bro.
He started going through numbers. He's like, you bought it at a really good price. He's like, you've installed water meters. You've filled up the vacancies. You've raised the NOI from here to here. The values have gone back up. You've got a ton of equity in this thing. He's like, so he worked out, like, he did a super fast cash out refi on the equity that we had in it, saved our butt, and plus I put all of my emergency savings and we pretty much maxed out the HELOC plus the cash out refi. I mean, it was still down to the wire, but he saved our butts. We got it done. We did that. We got EPA approval, like in every single round of comments, we answer all of their comments. And then they just come back with brand new comments. I'm like, why couldn't you get, and it was like, and then and it was like, I was counting like the number of weeks we had left where we could still pay the temporary pumping. And it was like, we were running out of weeks. And then there was like the spring, it got designed, they had it, they're ready to ship it. And then it was like the spring thaw. And like Michigan has this thing where they like, reduced the maximum weight limit of trucks on the roads. And they're like, we don't know how long, but you can't. And so I had to like call the contractors, like nothing I can do. And so I remember I called the like highway department, explained it. I was like, so they gave us like an emergency exception to it. Like, and it was insane, but we got it in, we installed it. We got it in, we installed it, we hooked it up. So October was when I got the call. We hooked it up. I think it came online right at the end of May. We brand new. So then we have a brand new wastewater treatment plant. And then I was still screwed because the refi loan that the bank did it was like a 1-year balloon with the intention that then we would like refi the whole thing together. But that was right as the interest rates were starting to scream up. So I was like,
man,
now I'm not going to be able to, like it would have been fine before the interest rates screamed up, but then the interest rates, whatever they did, doubled from the time this started to then. And it was like, I'm not going to be able to service the debt when I have to refi this thing in 6 months. So then we ended up, we listed it, we sold it. So I sold it for $750,000 more than I bought it for. So I bought it for 1.75. I sold it for 2.5 that fall. So the whole project cost 1.2. Insurance with everything all in ended up covering 200 with like debris removal. They had some other coverages in there. So it covered 200. So that put us right around $1 million. And then I got 750 of that back basically with the sale. So it was still but it's okay. It's an Ivy League education and infrastructure replacement.
Man, so many lessons there. And so I can just...
If I had the insurance right, it would have been stressful, but we would have and if I had sold it, I mean, I had like 400,000 into it. So we would have almost tripled our money in 2 or 3 years, if I just had the insurance right. So it was like literally like that one thing was the difference.
Wow.
So double check your insurance limits.
So many great lessons there. Yeah, I've learned about insurance in Florida with hurricanes and whatnot. But lessons there from one, your insurance, but two, your lender, and knowing that they're a true partner in this. They underwrote the deal. They're giving you the debt. They don't want you to go upside down. But maybe speak to the lender part of it. Did you even know that was an option? To talk to them, have a conversation, and maybe they might have a solution?
Yeah, I mean, no, I thought it was going to be like, okay, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're bad.
Here's when you need to hand over the keys to your house. But it was like, it wasn't even just it was like, what about all the families who live there too? Like, I don't know, it was like the whole thing was messed up. So it was amazing. So yeah, it was, and like so many people came through. The other thing I didn't mention, the contractor, because he knew the situation we were in too. He had a relationship with the manufacturer of these things and explained the situation to them. They had a customer who was like not in a hurry for their wastewater treatment plant, I guess, who gave us their place in line, or else we said like, so I don't even know who this person is. I've never met them. I don't even know their name. So many people like came through to get us out of the pickle. It was like very humbling. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to contrast what happened here, or just have your comments on this, is that so many real estate coaches and so many things are like, you know, what you do is you buy it here, you put a little bit of work into it, you increase the value by $50,000, and then you immediately pull the $50,000 out, and then you got no money in the deal, i.e. no equity. And you keep doing this on all your properties all the time. You leverage it to the max. Why do you think, just contrast that philosophy of things with where you are with, you've got a backstop, you've got cash reserves, you've got equity. Just as some people would say, you're wasting the equity. Where's your return on equity? Talk about that concept of just leverage everything to the max, and kind of what would have happened had you done that.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, it would have been shut down. We would have gotten foreclosed. Yeah, like if we didn't have the equity in there, it would have been really, really bad. You can get higher returns if you leverage higher, in theory. But I've discovered, especially during that whole thing, that I really like my sleep. I value my sleep. So, I mean, there's some extent, like I don't go all the way over on like the Dave Ramsey side, where it's like never take a loan, right?
Take cash for everything.
Yeah, because there's definitely like got to be a balance between getting enough returns to make it worth your effort. But yeah, I like the cash out refi play. I honestly think like that's a good play to a point, because you've got this thing, you've raised the value, so you don't actually have no equity because you've actually added a bunch of equity. But I don't like, what I wouldn't want to do is like cash out refi, pulling all the equity out, like you said. Like that's that's great. Like we're pretty conservative on like LTVs and things. Cause like I said, I like to sleep at night.
You're an investor. You must be risky.
No, I
Yeah.
like to sleep at night. And so it's like the mega leverage, like the short term, like bridge debt stuff. Like I don't know. I don't, where you're basically buying something where it doesn't, like the property doesn't cover the loan. The property doesn't cover the loan because you think you can get it to a point where it covers the loan. I think you can probably, I don't know. It's like a risk reward thing, right? You're just way higher up the risk ladder on those.
And this is the thing I want to mention for our listeners is that there is an entire spectrum here of everywhere from, as you said, the Dave Ramsey, just pay cash. Well, if you're Dave Ramsey, you probably can. But between the pay cash for everything and use everybody else's money for everything, and you have no skin in the game and you got nothing, there's a lot of data points. There's a lot of places you could land in that whole spectrum of things. Yes, you could do a cash out. I've done cash outs to buy another property, but we took out less than the maximum amount of cash out. And we did that on a place that had more than enough cash flow to pay, not only for itself, but provide a little bit of backstop for, CapEx issues and things going like this. So there's just a whole spectrum of things in there. And I remember Ashley Kerr, she was on the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie, and she does work with insurance. And people will ask her all the time, well, what should I do? How should I do this? How should I do? She's like, well, what helps you sleep at night? Right. That's not specific advice. That's like, well, you need to think about that. What does it mean to you? What do your assets look like? How much cash flow do you have? How much equity do you have? Do you have a W-2 going on? Are these recourse or non-recourse loans? Which, if you don't know what that means, is recourse loans mean they're coming after you, right? And a non-recourse loan means it's your assets, it's limited to that. And if the asset can't pay for it, then, well, that's too bad for the lender. And so it's a little more complicated than that. Okay. So that's in a nutshell type of a thing. But there's all of these levers on the actual control panel. And what happens is that we overhear a conversation with another investor. We see something on social media. We watch a 5-minute YouTube thing, and we think that's how you do it. But all we saw them move one lever. And we didn't see all the other levers and buttons that are out there that they may be using that we're not aware of, or that they may not be aware of. So this is just all to say, take your time, talk to people, you get involved with every professional you can everywhere through this. Find out, there's another engineer, and I think engineers are well positioned for investing, because a lot of my understanding is it's how do we reduce the risk? Because you can't know everything. I love watching YouTube videos about like building construction. And they'll say, well, we know to a degree how much stress this metal, this style of arch or beam or whatever can have. And then depending on the risk, we just add an X, like, well, we need it 5X stronger than that, or X, or whatever the thing is. And it's kind of like, because you can never actually super know all the variables, because if the wind is high, if the temperature is this, if the load is this, and then there's like this other little thing that happens right then, well, all bets are off kind of a thing, right? Engineers, one of the cool things that I saw somebody do, they said, look, I'm afraid of this potential. And so how can I mitigate that? And what's a backup to that mitigation? Okay, what about this other problem? How could I mitigate that? And so literally she put it out on a spreadsheet. And it's like, this is what we could, now that's still not a guarantee, but man, you're stacking the odds in your favor. And like I had a deal go way sideways. And if I had taken out all the equity everywhere and I had spent, i.e. wasted, according to some people, my cash, by keeping cash, because why would you ever keep cash? That's a stupid thing to do. Yeah, invest it in everything and pull out all your equity, because your return on equity is like so bad because it's just sitting there wasting. It's like, no, that's actually a backstop.
And it allows you to go do all the other things, right, that are making the returns. Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, I'll pull out that equity to get this good deal over here. And sometimes it's like, oh, shoot, I got to pull out that equity to keep from going bankrupt. Because that is a scary, scary feeling. So coming out of that, you've shared a lot of your tactical steps, watching for insurance, having adequate reserves, having relationships with vendors, getting proper appraisal valuation on parts of your infrastructure that have stuff. What kind of steps do you take now as you're looking at a new deal? You're like, all right, what like check sheet includes what kinds of things?
Check sheet includes all kinds. We have our Asana project with a long check sheet, and every time we learn something new, it gets added to the template. So it's always getting better. So there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, the main thing. So there's clearly. So the way I look at it is I use an acronym that I didn't invent. I got it from Frank Rolf, but I like it because it just kind of gets you think of the main zones. But it's IDEAL. So IDEAL for mobile home parks. So infrastructure, density, economics, the age of the homes, and the location. The importance is not necessarily in that order. The location I would put number one, but excuse me. So the first thing we're looking at is location. So I want an area with high demand, because everything else, if you get it for the right price and put in enough money, you can fix it, but you can't pick it up and move it. So the first thing is the location. If there's a high demand for housing in the area, that can make up for a lot of other stuff, because you can bring in homes. When you bring them there, you can sell them. You can raise the occupancy. The crazy thing with mobile home parks is so many of them have this extra vacancy that's not due to a lack of demand. It's because it takes capital and work to fill lots. And a lot of these things have been owned for decades by people that built them in the 50s, 60s, 70s that don't even have a mortgage. And so they just haven't been motivated enough to actually go fill them. So there's a big potential for upside on them that can help with, as soon as you raise that income, you raise the value in a mobile home park. The value is proportional to the income. So I'm sorry, I'm getting off track here. But so on the infrastructure side, city water and sewer is obviously the best. We do have some that are well and septic, and we have well operators in septic, and there's a whole other like inspection and due diligence process with that. But so there's infrastructure. Density is actually the number one reason that we've had to like pass or drop on a deal. Most mobile home parks are grandfathered in. So they're not conforming to the zoning code, but they were built before the zoning code went into effect. So it's called legal non-conforming, but they will still be able to come in and say, hey, you have to have this much space between your homes. And maybe the homes are really, really close together. So what can happen is you can't fill those vacant lots because they don't make a home small enough to fit. And if they did, it would be so tiny, no one would want to live in it between the homes. And even worse, they're not going to last forever. They're not going to be here in 1,000 years, right? So at some point, you're going to have to replace some of these homes, and you can't because there's not enough room. So it becomes this kind of like dying park situation. So that's actually like one of the number one things is just talking to zoning and making sure that we understand all the rules and we can actually legally do the things that we want to do. The economics is just the underwriting. That's like the making sure the numbers work. The age of homes kind of plays into that same thing. Like what kind of headaches are you buying, especially if you're inheriting a bunch of them. Yeah. And then we've got a bunch of location metrics as far as what we look for.
Cool. Yeah. And when I see posts on social media, it's like, I don't know, that doesn't look pretty good, but I think it'll be okay. It's like the I think it'll be okay is not actually what drives the universe. It's like there are other things. And if your plan is that hope will change it, maybe not a great plan. So where do you go for inspiration? Where do you go for a mindset boost? What sources do you go to?
Great question. So I have several coaches that I work with. I'm in a couple mastermind groups. We're in the Better Life Tribe. I'm in another mastermind as well. So I've got some of those, and then books. I go to books a lot. So I really I've gotten a ton of value out of books. I think the one that I think had probably which it's a weird book to bring up for that like wastewater treatment plant thing, but the David Allen Getting Things Done book is. It shouldn't be called Getting Things Done. It sounds like some kind of productivity book about how to get more done. The subtitle is The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, which should actually be the title of the book because there's very little in that book about actually doing anything. But it's all about how to feel okay with the fact that you are always going to have more to do than you can do and how to make good decisions about what that is. And when I was in the middle of that wastewater treatment plant thing, there's a lot of this like when you feel overwhelmed, it's like, I don't know why this is the analogy or this is the saying that people have, but like, how do you eat an elephant? And people say one bite at a time. I don't know why that's it, but that's kind of the concept of like why a lot of times, at least for me, that I'll feel overwhelmed is I'll look at this thing and say like, man, there's no way I can look at all of the stuff between me and there. Like, there's no way I can do all that stuff and just lose control. So what David Allen would say is, ignore all the stuff in the middle. He's like, define what done is, define what success looks like, and then figure out what your very next action is and just focus on that. And then, that really, really helped me avoid so it was like, okay, the plant burned down. I guess I need to find a civil engineer. Okay, I'm going to call and find civil engineers. Okay, found that. Crap, it's going to cost a lot of money. After I have my little freak out, like, okay, what is the thing I can start calling other, whatever that next step is. That really, really helped get my head straight and kind of keep me moving forward despite feeling like I was in a whirlwind.
Life
awesome.
will continuously send us obstacles and curveballs. There is no mountain peak that we get to and magically all problems go away forever. That is not the case. That is not life. And it is the journey, and it's understanding, okay, this sucks, acknowledging that, but then how do we put one foot in front of another and just get to a solution and start to problem solve and just figure it out.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, Corey, thank you for being open with us and our listeners about this one thing did not go well, but you're still in it. You're still doing work, and we learn incredibly valuable things from the struggles that we have. And hopefully, as we share things on this podcast, like you have here, is that this creates value for other people. It's like, oh, wow, I was thinking about buying this. I had a friend who was thinking about buying a campground, and they had a plan. They had a budget for building out the store / office / laundromat, bathrooms, and I think it was about $750,000. And I thought, I think I can make the numbers work. And then he thought, I'm just not sure. That bid was 2 years old. Maybe I ought to just check it out before I buy that. He got the bid, came in at more than double. The prices had changed that much. And so the seller wasn't trying to mislead the buyer, because that was the numbers that they actually had from an actual contractor. But the numbers had changed in those 2 years so much so that the deal didn't work anymore. It's like, now I'm not even going to make any money. Like, this just doesn't make any sense to do. And so by sharing these things and so on, we can help other people avoid, hopefully, some of the things that we've been through. Thanks so much for being our guest. Where can people find you? Where can they see your story? If they want to get in touch with you about mobile homes, if they've had a fire and their treatment plant burned down and they need some wisdom, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I've got a free PDF on mobile home park investing, specifically passive mobile home park investing through like syndication. So that's at passivemhp.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So Corey Harrelson, you can find me on there. And it's actually me who's replying. So you can get me. It's not a chat bot.
Excellent.
Unlike a lot of folks these days.
Well, Christy, you want to take us out?
Yeah, so if this show added any value to you, we would love if you would give us a 5-star review and like and subscribe on the different channels. You can find us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. We love doing this. This is something that we want to get the real stories out there, to tell the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. Because when something comes up and something goes wrong, we don't want you to think that it's your fault, it's just you. You're the only one not hitting home runs. We all go through this, but as Corey said today, we figure it out along the way. So again, if you can like and subscribe on the platforms, we can get more of this out there. And thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, this show is for informational purposes only. We are not your attorney, your CPA, or your therapist, though we've probably needed all three at some point.